Hi everybody, it's Stefan again for aituts.com, and in today's tutorial we are not gonna be creating anything fancy, but we are going to talk about performance and mainly about how to increase our performance in After Effects. So, what we need to do to increase our performance is to get a Quadro graphics card from NVIDIA. These cards are a professional solution for all After Effects users and Adobe users. It can increase your performance dramatically, as you can see later on. And here you can see the different types and models of cards. Of course, there are several different classes: high-end products, mid-range and entry products. And I decided to buy a high-end product. I got this card right here, Quadro FX 3800. So I'm pretty happy with it, and I decided to share with you guys all the knowledge I got working through the internet to get an idea about these graphics cards and how they can help me in my work. So the first thing is you buy the card. The second thing is you install the card on your computer, PC or Mac, and after that you need to download a drivers or install the drivers that are included in the box, but I suggest you to download the drivers from the official NVIDIA site. And here you can choose your product type, which is Quadro, and choose your model right here. In my case, this model, and choose Quadro Performance Driver. And it depends what kind of software you use, because as you can see there is a 3ds Max Performance Driver, but I downloaded this driver and I'm pretty happy. So choose this driver, and operating system, choose your operating system. In my case, Windows 7 64-bit, language, and hit search. And you can see here is the driver. Download it, install it, and you can test the graphics card with some heavy projects to see how it will work. There are several very important things that you need to know, and I will list them in a minute. And first I will start with the OpenGL standard. OpenGL is a set of standards for high performance processing of 2D and 3D graphics on the graphics processing unit, also known as GPU, for a wide variety of applications. For After Effects users, OpenGL provides fast rendering for previous and final output by moving rendering from the CPU to the GPU on the display card. Sometimes performance improvements due to processing on the GPU are referred as a hardware acceleration. To use OpenGL in After Effects, you need a display card that supports OpenGL 2.0 and has shader support and support for NPOT or non-power of 2 textures. Feature support in After Effects is dependent on the OpenGL hardware. I want to point out something very important, because not all features of a composition can be rendered with OpenGL, and because some features that can be rendered with OpenGL are rendered with different results, you may only use the OpenGL rendering to accelerate your previews and to provide faster rendering for non-final results. Another thing I want to point out is that you cannot use the render multiple frames simultaneously multi-processing feature while also using OpenGL to run previews or render for final output. The render multiple frames simultaneously feature works by using background process of multiple CPU processor cores to render frames. Here is a list of all the features that OpenGL can render in After Effects. it can render shadows, except point white shadows. Colored shadows appear gray. White 8 maximum, masks, alpha channels, track mattes, intersecting layers, transformations for 2D and 3D layers. And here is a short list for the GPU accelerated effects, including alpha levels, bevel alpha, bilateral blur, box blur, brightness and contrast, channel blur, color balance, HLS, curves, directional blur, drop shadow, fast blur, find edges, fractal noise, Gaussian blur, hue and saturation, invert, noise, radial blur, ramp, sharpen, tint, and turbulent noise. It also can render all blending modes except dissolve and dancing dissolve, metal property settings for 3D layers, cone feather settings for white layers, 2D motion blur adjustment layers, anti-aliasing, depth of field blur, and nested compositions. And a very important note that OpenGL is not used to render a nested composition if the pre-composition layer has a mask or a non-GPU accelerated effect applied to it. Another thing that is very important is that when OpenGL does not support a feature, it simply renders without using that feature. For example, if your layers contain shadows and your OpenGL hardware does not support shadows, the final output will not contain shadows. Now I'm going to show you how to tweak some of the settings in order to speed up your work inside After Effects. First thing you need to do while making a RAM preview is to change your mode right here. You can click on this button and change it from adaptive resolution OpenGL off to OpenGL always on. And you can see that the OpenGL title appears here, and now your computer will use your graphics card to accelerate the effects or some of the effects that it supports. And here I don't have a Quadro because this is my old workstation, but I'll show you in a minute a test video that shows what is the difference between rendering with the Quadro card and without it. So that's about the previews. You can click on this button again and click on the fast previews preferences, and as you can see we have several settings here. We have adaptive resolution limit, which can be changed, and enable adaptive resolution with OpenGL, which means that even using OpenGL it can be a bit hard to render, so it enables the OpenGL to work with adaptive resolution, which means that it will lower the resolution in order to provide a smooth playback on the screen. And the second thing is accelerate effects using OpenGL when possible, which is very important to be turned on. And we have a OpenGL info which shows which things are supported and which are not supported. And as you can see, even this graphics card supports all the features listed here, and by default the texture memory is set to 200 megabytes, and my graphics card is 512 megabytes I think. And you need to change this number here to something that is below 80%, for example to 350, or if you have 1 gigabyte of memory on your graphics card, you may want to set this to 750 or so on, but not above 80% of your memory. So I will keep it 350 and hit OK, and again click OK. The next thing, which is very important, is rendering with OpenGL for the final output. You simply need to come to composition, make movie, and choose your format, for example QuickTime, hit OK, and click on the render settings button. And as you can see here, we have an option, use OpenGL renderer. You can simply turn this on and click OK. And now when we hit render, it will render our composition using OpenGL renderer, which will speed up our render dramatically and provide us needed performance. Now let's see the compare video test that I made. I took one of my projects and rendered out 100 frames from it with OpenGL renderer and without OpenGL renderer to see what will the difference in the final render. The video that you will see here is speeded up 4 times in order to not waste your time waiting to see the endless render. But now let's see how it looks. As you can see, here in the upper part we use OpenGL renderer for the final output, and below here we use the standard render. And as you can see here, the difference is pretty big. It's the same section of my project, 100 frames rendered using the 2 types of render. And as you can see here, this one is almost done, and it took us only 2 minutes and 12 seconds. And right here it took us a lot more, and this is for the 100 frames. Imagine that you have 5000 frames, and imagine what can be the difference in the render time. And as you can see, this takes a lot of time to render, even that I got 12 gigabytes of DDR3 memory on my new workstation and 8-core CPU. It takes forever to render it without OpenGL renderer, and as you can see, it took me 7 minutes and 29 seconds to render, and you can see that the difference is really dramatic. This is more than 5 minutes for just 100 frames. So that's it from me. Hope that this was useful for you, and we'll see you next time.